Byrne Construction is in the business of people building buildings. That's the approach Byrne Construction Services brought to every project for 99 years in Fort Worth. It's a reminder that success is based upon skills of individuals working together and that the human element has to be present in all of their buildings. After all, people don't just build buildings, they occupy them too. Oh, yeah. Tell some. All right. So next up is going to be the invocation led by Leanne Guzman, City Attorney, City of Fort Worth, followed by the national anthem played by Harriet Harrell, Principal of the Harrell Group. Please come on up.
All right, shall we pray? We're thankful that we're all here together today, and may we all work together as individuals and in unity with each other to put service over self, to put service over our discomfort to go outside our comfort zone, to put service over our doubts that our actions are making a difference, to put service over our schedule that we jam-pack with things that aren't priorities, to put service over our plans so that we take the time necessary to help someone in need. May we connect with others here at Rotary to maximize our potential to help and to create synergies and relationships that make Fort Worth an even better place to live, work, and play. And most of all, may we all survive this heat, and may the triple-digit heat wave break. Amen.
Thank you, Harriet. All right, next up is Tyra Ingram, owner-agent of Tyra Ingram State Farm, to welcome our guests. Come on up, Tyra. There you are.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have a lot of guests today, so we're not going to call you out individually, but we just want to welcome all the guests to today's meeting, and we hope you enjoy yourselves, and we see you again. Thank you.
And one more point checked off for the red badge transition, right? Okay. Now, a tradition of our club is to cite our four-way test. So let's start with, is it the truth? All together. Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Keep in mind, that is for everything we say and everything we do. All right. Next up, past president Andy Taft, president Downtown Fort Worth, Inc., to do the newscast.
You really are much too kind. Thank you. I feel about as welcome as I do a couple of blocks north of here. Well, a third monkeypox case has been identified in Tarrant County, and Glenn Whitley is considering another countywide work-from-home order. What a ripoff, said the monkeys at the Fort Worth Zoo. Conspiracy theorists are warning against taking the monkeypox vaccine. They're claiming that's how the government is going to give us all microchips. Monkeypox isn't our only worry, of course. There's chicken pox and dog pox and cat pox and mouse pox and horse pox and cow pox and pigeon pox and plum pox and seal pox, sheep pox, goat pox, small pox, pig pox, Goldilocks in a box with a fox and socks pox, and July 2022's everything's in a flox pox. Elon Musk got himself in a box. He offered to buy all the Twitter stocks. He crashed the value and backed out. Twitter's suing, and their case is stout. And now Elon's got the Twitter pox. Wow, poetry haters. Okay. This week, the new James Webb Space Telescope is looking further into the past than humans have ever been able to see before. Scientists are still working to adjust the focal strength a little more, and if they're successful, they'll be able to see all the way back to the original Glenn Whitley swearing-in ceremony. Glenn just said he's after me. That's not good. Today's Star Telegram quotes a new CNBC report that says Texas is the worst state to live in. Fact, more people moved to Texas in 2021 than any other state, and California is the lead exporter. The CNBC report was first seen by the James Webb Space Telescope, which it can also see into the future. Tough room. Also in astronomy news, supercomputers using artificial intelligence have traced a Martian meteor rock that landed on the Earth back to the exact crater of its origin on Mars. And we, using human intelligence, sometimes tell people that we can't find the cell phone that we're talking to them on. That's not good, so, just bring in the Terminators right now. The South Hewlin Walmart was evacuated this week after a false call was made to the police about a disturbed person in the restroom. No disturbed person was found. Now, we have all been to Walmart, and if they had tried even a little bit, they would have found a disturbed person. On this date, in 1834, the Spanish Inquisition ended 3.5 centuries after it began. 350 years of torture, religious persecution, and degradation. I took Spanish for 1 semester at Our Lady of the Knuckle Ruler, so I know how those people felt. There's a few Catholics in the room. Also on this date, in 1870, Georgia became the last state in the Confederacy to be allowed readmission into the Union. The latest reports out of Georgia suggest that that might have been premature. And finally, really too kind. Finally, COVID is on the rise again. This week, Vladimir Putin was exposed to COVID-19 and the virus was sent into quarantine for 10 days. This week will feature weather only a dermatologist could love, so apply lots of sunscreen and wear your hat. Thank you.
My glasses. Aurora gave me an 18-point font, and it just isn't big enough. So, thank you, Andy. Great newscast. Up next is Kathy Sheffield, Secretary for our club, Chief Advancement Officer of Lena Pope Home, to give us some second readings. Oh, do I do Fernando?
Oh, that's all right.
Where? Oh, after.
My agenda said something different, so sorry. Thank you very much, Captain Kirk Driver. We have 2 second readings today. The following proposed new members were submitted during the July 8th program. If no objections are received through the voting process, then the proposed member will be accepted into our club. The proposed members are Dana Fitzpatrick, Director of Inclusion, Programs, and Community Engagement at Tarleton State University, classification Education University Administration, and her proposer was Kim McQuestion. I move her election subject to attending a new member Rotary information session.
What do I say? There it is. I have a motion. Is there a second? Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. She hereby elected. Welcome.
The second individual is William Masterson, title Chief Operating Officer. He works at JPS Health Network. The classification is institutions and hospitals, and his proposer is past President J.R. Labby. I move his election, subject to attending a new member Rotary information session.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Excellent. All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. He is hereby elected. Welcome. Thank you, Kathy. Now, past President Fernando Costa is coming to the stage, please, for a quick announcement, sir.
Well, I appreciate Andy's story about Georgia, but next Friday, a delegation of urban planners from the Republic of Georgia in Eastern Europe will be arriving in Fort Worth for a week of briefings and tours and social events to learn more about American business and government and culture. And we've arranged for each of our visitors to stay with a host family in Fort Worth, except that two of our host families have unexpectedly had to withdraw. So the call for the Rotary Club of Fort Worth, in the spirit of service above self, do we have two Rotarians, one who would be willing to consider hosting a well-educated mid-career manager from the Republic of Georgia for 8 nights while they stay in Fort Worth? If you are, please see me immediately after this meeting. It would be greatly thankful for your generosity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando. Now up, Kathy, come on back up for second reading. Wait, we already did that. Why is it here? It's on here twice. All right. Go ahead and log that one. All right. Next up, new member intros. Okay, so we have past President Courtney Lewis, EVP of Candace Bank, and Chris Jordan, President of Electroacoustics, Inc., to come up and introduce our new members. Come on up.
All right.
There we go.
Okay, we'll do ladies first here. First, I'd like to introduce Kashondalyn Key Bryant. She is a Northeast Texas native. She began her education career in 2011 as a middle school science teacher at Marshall ISD, about 15 miles from where she was raised. Key relocated to the DFW area in 2016 to further her career. This leap provided her the opportunities to serve as a program director, K-8 reading and science instructional coach, and currently regional manager of after-school programming at IDEA Public Schools, Tarrant County. Her experience extends across both public and charter schools, as well as the nonprofit sector. Key holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Texas at Austin in health promotions and a master's degree in educational leadership from Lamar University. Prior to her career in education, Key served as a medic in the U.S. Army and worked in the field of allied health. Key's passion for human welfare permeates all aspects of her life. Key currently resides in Crowley with her son Nathan and her fur baby Bella. Key, come on up.
Thank you all. I'm so excited to join the Fort Worth Rotary Club. I was told I have about 60 seconds to say something interesting about myself. The story I knew had to include my favorite person, my grandmother. So when I was pregnant with my son, the military relocated us to Alaska. And I went into labor on April Fool's Day. I called my grandmother and she said, "Girl, you better hold that baby in, because nobody is gonna believe when he says, I was born in Alaska on April Fool's Day. Everyone will think it's a joke." So I held him until 2 a.m. on April 2nd. But he's still somewhat considered an Alaskan native.
And next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Donnell Clinton Waters. He was born and raised in Philadelphia. He was educated in Philadelphia public schools, graduating from Franklin Learning Center. Dr. Waters holds a Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education Child Development from Morehouse College, a Master's of Arts in Curriculum and Teaching from Michigan State University, a dual Master's in Educational Leadership and MBA from Dallas Baptist University, and wait, there's more. He also holds a PhD in K through 16 Educational Leadership and Policy from the University of Texas at Arlington. Dr. Waters has teaching experience throughout the country, as well as in Camden, New South Wales, Australia. He has served as principal for 10 years and is currently the executive director of IDEA Public Schools, Tarrant County. Dr. Waters is also an adjunct professor at Educational Leadership at UT Arlington and a published author. He resides in DeSoto, Texas with his wife Cynthia and 2 children, Amoy and Donnell Jr. Donnell, come on up.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I'm excited to have this privilege and honor of being part of the Rotary Club here in Fort Worth. My story is not as interesting as Key's, because I couldn't have a baby born in Alaska. But a lot of folks, I was given an ultimatum to move to Texas. So being from Philadelphia, I met my wife in Atlanta at Morehouse and Spelman. When I graduated from Morehouse and went to Michigan State, she came back home and she pretty much told me, "Move to Texas or find your woman in Detroit." That's the best I could do today. So I'm glad to be here in Texas and in the Rotary Club. Thank you.
Dr. Waters, that reminds me of a guy that I met in church. All right, I left the shovel down. So, all right. Well, today I would like to introduce Justin McLaughlin, one of our RMBA winners. So Justin founded Xena Roastery July 2nd, 2020, after years of consuming and wondering about coffee. He took a leap of faith to create his own coffee roasting company, Xena Roastery. It is the latest entrepreneurial endeavor that Justin's taken on. Entrepreneurship has long been a passion of Justin. This passion he started as a teen. His first business was cutting yards and shoveling snow, obviously not here in Fort Worth. He started several companies, and some of them failed. Justin earned a Master's of Public Administration and a Bachelor's of Economics from the University of Texas at Arlington. He worked in a variety of roles since graduating from college, including education, Crowley ISD, budget and finance, economic development, and grant admission. Currently, Justin works for the city of Fort Worth. Justin is a current member of Fort Worth Next Gen, the Fort Worth Black Chamber, and Bethlehem Baptist Church in Mansfield. He has been married since August 2009 to his wife. They met in a psychology class at UTA. In 2016, Justin and his wife gave birth to twins, 1 boy, 1 girl. Justin was not born in Fort Worth, but has worked and lived around Fort Worth for more than 10 years. He grew up in a rural part of Florida. I guess that's where he shoveled the snow. He lived in various places around the U.S. before moving back to Texas in 2004. Service has always been a part of Justin's personal mission. He has served and volunteered at churches he's attended. He's participated in a variety of projects for service-based organizations, including Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Habitat for Humanity, Mission Arlington, and Tarrant County Food Bank. And I also have it on very reliable information that today, if you give your business card to Justin and introduce yourself, you will get a discount, a special Rotary discount on a fresh bag of Xena coffee roast. So with that, I turn it over to Justin.
Thank you, Chris, and I come bearing gifts for sure. I would like to say thank you and hello to all my fellow Rotarians. I'm working up to my red badge, I'm excited. I'm gonna tell you a story about me that's about birds. So one of the rare things about me is I love watching birds. I love watching them in their habitats. I'm just like fascinated with different kinds of birds. And so if you ever see me walking around and I'm just kind of staring off in space or like staring up in the sky, it's usually because I'm watching some kind of bird. There was a class I took in undergraduate, it was like an elective, and we got to go around Northeast Texas, or this part of Texas, excuse me, and we had to like look at different types of birds, and like it captivated me. And I think the biggest thing is the freedom birds have, right? They can just kind of get their wings out and they can take off. And so anyways, that's the story of mine, and I look forward to learning more stories about people in the room, some of your interest in what you guys are into. So yeah, thank you.
It's today? Tomorrow's Justin's birthday. Happy birthday. All right. Now the big show. To introduce our guest speaker, the chairman of the day, John Barnett, President, Barnett Dental Group. Now sit down and try, oh, sorry, that's Biden moment. There you are. Thank you.
Rotary Club of Fort Worth. How blessed and privileged we are today to bear witness to Judge B. Glenn Whitley, Unplugged. Our accessibility into this reservoir of insight, wisdom, and intellect will be navigated and moderated by our own award-winning journalist and past president of Rotary Club of Fort Worth, J.R. Labby. We bid J.R. a Godspeed as she endeavors to draw deeply from this well, Judge Whitley. Judge B. Glenn Whitley earned his accounting degree from the University of Texas at Arlington. In 1983, Judge Whitley became a business owner and co-founder of the accounting firm Whitley Penn. The firm has been consistently recognized as one of the top 100 firms in the United States. With the June 13th announcement this year of a proposed merger with the Elliott Davis accounting firm based in Greenville, South Carolina, the new firm, Elliott Penn, will be one of the top 25 largest in the United States, with approximately 1,400 professionals spread around 16 offices in 6 states, with a combined revenue of approximately $400 million at closing. In 1997, Judge Whitley was elected a Tarrant County Commissioner. In 2007, Judge Whitley was elected to his present role as Tarrant County Judge, presiding over the Tarrant County Commissioners Court. He has held his position for the past 15 and one half years. Judge Whitley currently serves as a board member of the National Association of Counties and the Texas Association of Counties. Judge Whitley is the proud husband of Brenda Whitley, married 46 years. We got married in the same year as I married my wife, Arlene. They have 3 children and 9 grandchildren. I'd like to thank Judge B. Glenn Whitley for his many years of service to our community, enhancing our quality of life, which we all joyfully embrace. It gives me great honor to introduce to you Judge B. Glenn Whitley and our past president as moderator, J.R. Labby.
All right. Oh, crap. Didn't see who was in the front row. Foxy's in the house. Okay. All right, well, Dr. Barnett, thank you so much for that generous introduction. I won't go into what you can read in your bio, but I do want to say a few things to introduce my friend, Glenn Whitley. Yes, he is a family man. We know that. He's been a man of service since the time that he served in the U.S. Navy Reserve. He's always had a heart for that, and he's been very engaged in the USS Fort Worth. In fact, he came up with the idea of the Anchor Club, where there's a group of us who support the ship monetarily every year. He is a dog lover. Prior to Brenda and Glenn having children, they had a pedigreed pug named Shang. And my understanding is the best picture from that experience is you showing Shang in the circle with the fanny pack on your butt.
I don't remember the fanny pack, but I do remember showing Shang at shows.
He is a music lover of sorts. What was the one song you learned to play on the accordion for the church talent show where Brenda stood behind you and blew bubbles like Lawrence Welk?
Well, it was the only one I remembered after having stopped playing the accordion for a long period of time. It was called The Ranger. And so I'm sitting in the chair, and this is a little talent show, and I'm sitting there playing The Ranger, and all of a sudden these bubbles start coming from the back, and it's kind of like Lawrence Welk for all y'all old enough to remember.
Young people ask an old person.
Welk.
Yeah.
It was, I haven't played the accordion since that time.
See?
But I still have it.
Wise man.
I could take it up in retirement.
That sounds like a threat.
It is.
Okay.
Trust me.
So your predecessor as county judge was the boy mayor and the literal rainmaker, Tom Vandergriff. And again, young people ask the old people about how Lake Arlington actually filled up in 6 days because of Tom Vandergriff. He had that kind of swing. What's your most cherished memory of Tom?
Well, the most cherished memory doesn't even have anything to do with the Commissioner's Court. It was such an honor to having served with him, but I was the state president of an organization called DMLA back in, I guess it would have been about 73, just turned 20. And I went in to Vandergriff and I said, well, I called to see if I could get an appointment. And I got this appointment to go in and visit with him. And I went in and I asked him, I said, okay, I've just been elected president. Can you give me a car for the year? And he just kind of looks at me and he just kind of laughs and he says, well, you know, I don't know that I can give you a car for the year, but I'll tell you what, if you'll call me when you're going on trips, maybe I can give it to you for the weekend. And so he did, and so that was my first meeting with Tom Vandergriff. That would have been, as I said, in 72. Fast forward to 97, I'm elected, I guess, in 96, and I decide that I'm going to go in and visit with Tom before I take over as commissioner. And so I called, and this lady answers the phone. And so I go in, and there's Grace. And Grace was his secretary in 72 when I went in to visit with him there at the corner of Division in Collins. And she was still taking care of him in 96 when I went in to see him as county judge. He was as gracious and treated me as well in 72 when I was a 20-year-old as he did as commissioner, and then as he did when he retired and swore me in as judge. So I have a lot of great memories of Mr. Vandergriff, Judge Vandergriff. He was a one-of-a-kind statesman.
Yes, he was. He's very missed. You may not know this, but
Yeah, you got some stories here.
I do.
We're gonna have a talk about this tonight as my wife and I are eating dinner someplace.
Well, we're transitioning into something different now, so.
You're telling me somebody else may have given you.
Yep. There is a small group of conspirators who participate in a Glenn Whitley drinking game during your annual State of the County addresses.
I didn't even know this.
Yep. Anytime you said the words military, domestic violence, or transportation, around the room, you could see certain people, some of them who are sitting right there. And we really got hydrated on transportation.
Well, I'm surprised you even made it to transportation, because I always start my conversations out with recognizing the vets in the room, because you mean so much to us and to this country, and then talking about domestic violence, because especially as men, we need to speak about that every chance we get, whether it's with 3 people or whether it's with 100 people. There's never an excuse for striking a child or a spouse. And that's just the bottom line. There is no excuse. And we've got a DA now that'll put you in jail, and the county will be glad to, we'll give you 3 meals. I'm not going to tell you how good those meals might be, but so if they could make it to transportation, they'd already had a few.
It was mostly water.
Well, that's a sin.
Well, most of us had to go back to work. Eric, not so much, but the rest of us did.
Eric doesn't start work until after he's had a few.
Top of his license right there. So transportation has been the passion of your political service on the county level, because it is one of the issues that the county focuses on. There was a June 23rd story in the Fort Worth Report that talked about the future of highway building that can spur development, but it also can divide established and establishing neighborhoods as we go forward in this fast-growing area that still will never have enough concrete to move the people that we have here. How are we doing on the front of planning for the growth and the movement of people, products in our community?
Well, I think Tarrant County is doing as well as any place else in the country. We are fortunate to have our Regional Transportation Council, which covers, about 12 counties. And we all come together. In fact, our meeting was yesterday. And we all take off our individual hats when we go in there, and we focus on what's best for the region. Because you as citizens, for the most part, have no clue when you move from one city to the next or from one county to the next. And so it's critical that we link together highways, transit, whatever it may be, so that it's seamless to the community. We're one, I heard the statistic, and I haven't actually been able to find the documentation, but I'm a politician, so I can say whatever I want to anyway.
We're going to get to that.
But out of 100 different areas in this country, we're one of 5 in the last decade whose congestion didn't get worse. And when you stop and think, in 2006, Tarrant County had a $200 million bond package, which we basically said we were going to leverage with other dollars. And I think we've ultimately ended up leveraging, for every dollar we spent, we've managed to find another $2 or $3 to go with that. Just a year or so ago, we did a $400 million package, and we're in the process of, planning and spending money. I tell everybody, when I first went into office 26 years ago, I had a hearing on widening Cheeks-Sparger in Colleyville, and the second night, the constable had to be there to protect me. Because they want to be in the country, even though they're right next door to, they're sitting in at that time, a 6 million, now close to 8 million. But anyway, I wanted to expand Cheeks-Sparger. They like to tarred and feathered me. Well, in this bond project, they submitted a project to widen Cheeks-Sparger. So it's taken me 26 years, but by golly, we're gonna widen Cheeks-Sparger.
By golly. Your position as county judge makes you a key player in our community's response to public health issues and challenges, threats like COVID-19, which, as Andy made very clear today, is not going to be the last. We have a whole line of poxes coming our way, apparently. Our speaker in this club last week, Mike Sherrod, who's a futurist, said that business owners need to be ready for at least a month's interruption of business every 4 years or so due to some kind of threat to the community. What lessons did Tarrant County Public Health learn from COVID that makes us better prepared for the next shapoopy moment?
Well, what we learned is that we've got to do a better job of being prepared. We can never have enough people in public health to be there for a pandemic, but we can still be prepared for one. And I think the thing that we learned the most during COVID was how to collaborate and work together. Top priority, keep the hospitals open. Second priority, keep the businesses open. We had weekly calls with all the cities and the schools. I had a weekly call with the CEOs of the hospitals, a weekly call with a lot of the associations, nonprofits, a food bank, Meals on Wheels, all these organizations that were providing services that had not yet or had not previously been needed. We had to find new ways of doing it. Meals on Wheels delivered, I think, close to 5,000 extra meals on a daily basis. The food bank, everybody worked together. It was a collaboration. And I truly believe, I've had an opportunity to visit really counties all over the country. We don't know how good we have it here in Tarrant County, and it's because we work together. I look around this room, Eric, Lockheed and them are great community partners. Sometimes you'll hear people complain about the fact that we incentivize companies to come in. We incentivize companies to come and be our partners. And that's what we have been successful at. Lockheed, Hillwood, Facebook, Amazon, and there's other corporations and other companies that were already here that do a fantastic job of working in the community, doing those things that they can do, and that is just one of the things that makes us successful. But we do work together, and that's the only way you're going to be able to successfully, in my mind, react. I never thought, I knew as county judge, I had the power to write certain orders and do certain things. I didn't really want to dust off that order, and it's something that we had to do. But again, before I would do any of those things, I would talk with the cities, with the school districts, with the businesses, with the hospitals, and at least, excuse me, that doesn't mean I always did exactly what they wanted, but it at least said that I got their ideas. I remember this little side. The first thing they wanted to do is we were going to close down barbershops and hair salons. And I said, okay, folks, we're going to have a hand count on this one because I'm going to have names, because when I tell these places that they've got to shut down the barbershops and the hair salons, nope, I'm going to say, and we took a vote. And I had names, and everybody voted for it. And so I could say when we did that, that was one of the first things that we did. But I really believe in talking with people and getting input before I would make a decision.
You've mentioned hospitals a couple of times, and there's, Tarrant County Hospital District, of which you have a passing knowledge. You were a very strong proponent of the 2018 bond election for the hospital district, which was the first one in 35 years that they'd asked for, and you were really out there on the tip of the spear. What concerns do you have about the future of JPS and the bond program, given that you've got 3 new players on the Commissioners Court coming? They appoint the Board of Managers members at the hospital that oversee not only the $1 billion budget, annual budget for the network, but also the over $800 billion bond stuff that's going on here, so.
Well, first I want to recognize Charlie Powell and Steve Montgomery as 2, in fact, they're my 2 appointments to the hospital board, and they do a tremendous job for cookies. And I mean for cookies, that's all they get. And they work a lot of hours. So they've done a great job. JPS is a tremendous institution, level 1 trauma, the only one in Tarrant County, and when you leave here, you go to El Paso or to Lubbock before you get to the next one. They have a residency program, the largest family practice residency program in this country. A lot of the general practitioners, the family practice folks in Tarrant County are here because they went through residency. Residents, when they finish their residency, have a tendency to go 2 places, home or they stay put. And so it's very fortunate to have that residency program. And so those are things that just you don't think about. But then we're the safety net hospital. And not only are we the safety net where people come in an emergent situation or if they're not insured, but equally important, we have a clinic system. And what the bond issue will do is to extend that even more, create what is called a medical home, so that if you are in it, if you don't have insurance, instead of waiting until you've got an emergency and you've put it off so long that now it's much more difficult to take care of, that you can use that as your medical home and be able to go back and to maybe see the same doctor and really get used to that. Now, that's what we do, and that's why it's critical. But with 3 new members, a lot of times it's just another tax rate. And I often say you're not an urban county unless you have a hospital district. We have, people will compare us to Collin County. Well, that's all fine and good, but Collin County's half our size and population. We have 4,400 people in our jail today. They've got maybe 900 in theirs. It's just a different place. So it's important as the new folks come in that they understand what JPS is and what it isn't. And I've already had conversations. I talk with everybody and with anybody, and I'm not bashful about telling them what I think. And so, I will continue that practice until they bury me.
Which I hope is no time soon.
Well, me too, but it is what it is.
Okay. Throughout your farewell tour, and you've been speaking a lot, you have stressed that partisan politics have no place in local government, especially when, and I quote you from a Fort Worth Report story, the parties are being run by extremists. Prior to the primaries, in which you backed Betsy Price over Tim O'Hare, you said, quote, "If we're not careful, the county can be led down a different path. It would be one that wouldn't focus on collaboration and taking care of our most vulnerable," end quote. Do you stand by those words for the November general election?
Most definitely. If you look back, somebody had given me a copy recently of George Washington's farewell address. I'm not trying to compare myself to George Washington. And I'm really not as old as that. But what I will say is in that 226 years ago, that gentleman said that parties were going to be the downfall of our country. And he's right. Quite honestly, in Texas, county government is partisan. In many states, it's not. Local government should not be partisan. You know, why judges, I think, well, let me just say this. When it comes with any election, I truly believe that, and there's some states that have gone to this, we ought to have one primary that everybody runs in, and the top two go to November, unless one of them gets 50% plus one. Now, you know, that means that everybody's going to have to try to, golly, serve everybody in their district versus just one party or one extreme. And I think that's the way we need to be doing things, but that's going to be hard to get done because it has to get done at the legislative way. We have become, I remember when I first started at this, I can remember back that 26 years, that we always said we don't want Austin to become like Washington. Well, it's there. And in my subtle way, I believe that it happened beginning in 2006 when Dan Patrick was elected state senator and Empowered Texans was created. And I think those two things have done more to divide our state than any two things I can think of for as long as I can remember. Amen. So, you know, I believe that you've got to serve everybody. And I think a lot of people don't, I mean, in this primary, 16% of our registered voters voted. So what that means is that come November, there are going to be 500,000 to 600,000 people that are going to show up at that poll that didn't have a choice in who the candidates that they're going to vote on were. Now, and some of them, I'll talk to people. Some of them moved here and doesn't understand what open primary means. Some of them don't vote because they don't want to be labeled as a Republican or a Democrat. We've got some great people that are trying to do a great job. Stephanie Click has done a fantastic job. Don, I see Don back there. She has done a great job. Charlie Guerin, you know, here's the problem. You start, if I didn't mention their name, that don't mean I don't like all of them. But there's some you don't want me to mention their name. I've obviously told you what I think of Dan Patrick.
Have you really unplugged, though? He's not here. He's not here.
Well, I mean, it's just one of those things where we've got to get back to talking about the issues that affect people's lives. And we're not doing that. We've got to talk about property taxes. You know, the legislature has, okay, Beverly Powell is one of the other good ones.
And she doesn't get to go back because what they did to her district.
Oh, that is the poster child for what, you know, gerrymandering redistricting is. It ought to be done by an independent committee. And, you know, but it'll be a long time because, again, it has to pass the legislature. And as long as the parties, neither one of those parties are particularly fond of that recommendation, by the way, of doing an umbrella type primary. But I think that's the way it gets done if we're going to get it done. And if we don't change and people start voting in the primaries, then we're going to be extremely limited as to who we have a chance to vote for come November.
Thank you. So economic development is not a direct responsibility of the Commissioners Court, but there is no arguing that what you do with roads and transportation and what it means to have new businesses coming into any of our 41 incorporated areas are good news for the county. What impact do you think the repeal of Roe v. Wade and our state's response to it will have on the future corporate relocations to our state and county.
I wasn't expecting that one. I mean, we're going down highways and all of a sudden we turn to Roe v. Wade. That was a detour.
Life is hard.
It is a tough one. And I'm going to tell you, I'm very much pro-life. And so I have to say, but I also say this, if the folks that care so much about that child in the womb continued to care about them when they hit the room, we would be in better shape. And I've heard a lot of conversation about that since that decision was reversed, but I haven't yet seen them put the money where, put their money where their mouth is. And I'll give you an example that I've also started really pushing for right now. With our ARPA money, we set aside $45 million for childcare, try to work on that. My wife was a first grade teacher when we were married in '76. They were starting this new thing called kindergarten. And why were they starting kindergarten? Because the kids weren't ready for first grade. 40 years later, what are we starting now? We're starting pre-kindergarten. God, I hope it doesn't take us 120 years to figure out we got to take care of the kids from the time that parent, if they have to go back to work, goes back to work. And it can't be reduced child care. It has got to be free child care. And it doesn't have to be done by the school districts. It could be done by the churches. It can be done by private business. I don't care how it's done, but it's got to be a quality child care. There was an article in the paper last week, I believe, that talked about all of the unlicensed child care providers. I think it was in Tarrant County. Folks, if we're ever going to have a level playing field, we've got to make it level from the time they get into the institution. I was talking with someone from, who was I talking with? Bezos, about they're doing Montessori, well,
Chatting with Bezos.
No, I wasn't chatting with Bezos. I'd love to have the chance to chat with him about this. But he is paying for Montessori type schools for pre-kindergarten type stuff, 4-year-olds. And I'm just saying, no, you got to take it on down. And I think if we're going to ever really have a true playing field, if we're going to say we care about that child in the womb, and we've got to care for them and take care of them when they hit the room. And the first thing we got to do is provide quality child care that will give them that level playing field.
Thank you, sir. So one more before we open up to the floor to folks. I personally don't see you unplugging from community service at all in some way. What's life look like down the road for B. Glenn Whitley?
Well, I can guarantee you, if I had $100 for every time that question was asked, Brenda and I could retire and wherever we wanted to in this world. I truly don't know. There's a couple of things I know. One, I don't want a full-time job, which brings back a memory of when early in our marriage, I can remember well being at the house, at her parents' house, both of whom were teachers. My sister, brother were teachers. But I can remember them asking, well, what are you going to do when you're retired? I said, I think I'll be a teacher. That didn't go over well with the household. It was a few months before I was welcomed back in that. So I'm very careful, but what I'm just saying is I don't want to have to get up at 8 in the morning and go to work, and they expect me to be there at 5. I want something where Brenda and I are free to travel when we want to travel. I had a friend of mine who worked for TI and had retired, and he said, Angie and I were looking at the TV last night and we saw this advertisement for some place that they had never been before, and they said, why don't we go? And the next morning they got out and went. Well, I'd like for it to be something like that, but at the same time, you're right. I won't stay unplugged. I just don't know what I will get. I have loved NACO, which is the National Association of Counties. I've loved being involved with county government. I knew nothing about it. Steve Montgomery, David Tesmer, and Chris Gabris, after a Chris Harris fundraiser, we went across the street to a little Cajun place and had dinner, and they mentioned to me, have you ever thought about running for county government? And I didn't have a clue as to what county government was. And I will tell you, at this point in time in my life, I have been extremely fortunate to have had two absolutely fantastic careers, one in accounting and one at the county. And I can think of no better place to have worked than in county government, because as an elected official, I have been able to not only pass policy, but to implement that policy. And, sometimes we may have done a good job of it, and sometimes maybe not so good a job of it, but at least we had an opportunity to try. And county government is, if I can stay and work and help county government, I'll do it until they put me in the ground.
That's the second time you've talked about being put in the ground.
Yeah, and I say that, and Brenda and I are both going to be cremated, so I don't know if they'll put me in the ground or if they'll spread the ashes.
Does anybody have a quick question for the judge before we let him go and let you go to start your weekend? Any questions from anyone?
It's 3 minutes before Rotary lets out.
Right. I know I didn't cover everything. Michelle?
Four-way test.
Okay, so all these folks are looking at that new kind of economic impact grant that launched on Monday. Do you have any thoughts about that process?
You talk.
The county.
The county's money that yes, apply, and if you're questioning whether or not you can, call the office. We've got people to head up. I think we've already got 300 applications. We did this the first time, but for not near as much money. I think we've got 25 million set aside, and we want to spend it. Yes. Yes, and it's, to some extent, I think you have to have less than 50 employees. We're trying to get the money. We really have been very deliberate about the 408 million we got. We did a needs survey. We've given 45 million, or we've allocated preliminarily 45 million to childcare. I think 35 million to help homelessness. 25 million economic. We know we're going to be doing stuff with public health. Again, we won't be staffed for public health, but we'll be prepared for the next pandemic. And we're going to work with the cities, with the educational institutions, with everybody to try to be prepared. We had a great deal of, again, cooperation and working. People work their rear ends off, they're tired. It's been 2 years.
So is any of that money going to be left on January 1?
Not any that I have control over. We've got the transportation bond that we did, and I've got some projects that I'm going to do with that. But we're gonna make sure that the money is hopefully obligated enough so that if anybody decided they might want to send some back, they're going to have a hard time doing it.
I love it. Judge, thank you so much for being here today. Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
One short question. This weekend, with the expansion of highways, what part of town should everybody avoid?
Northeast. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to come to work on Saturday or tomorrow, because at 9:30 tonight, they're going to begin destroying that little bridge that goes over from south, as you're going south on 820. Avoid the 820, 121 interchange out there by the mall, because it's going to be a mess.
Words to live by. It's going to be a mess. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Judge Whitley, for coming to speak to us today. It's a tradition of the Fort Worth Rotary Club to donate a book in honor of our guest speaker each week. This is a framed copy of the book plate that will go in that book dedicated in your honor. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all for this. I have, they're on my shelf. We're beginning to look for things, for places to put things that are on my shelf because my wife has already told me they ain't coming home. I was telling John earlier that as I'm beginning to clean out things and look for things, I came across this little toolkit that has Thomas S. Byrne 80-year anniversary, which was given out in 2003, and I have some of the tools, some of the screwdrivers, Phillips heads, and things like that in there. Great people, great companies are what has made Tarrant County, Fort Worth, a great place to live and to raise a family. It's just fantastic. I rarely, even though I was born in that county to the east, I never go there anymore.
I'd like to give a thank you again to Byrne Construction for today's sponsorship. If we have plenty of opportunity for program sponsorship. If you're interested, contact Courtney Lewis, our current program sponsor person, whatever.
Sponsoring next Friday, so they can't have that sponsorship.
Thank you. Jim Austin is sponsoring next Friday, so a quick plug to him. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. It is dues renewal time. See Aurora, get your dues paid, please, so we don't have to hound you and she doesn't have to break out the bat. Immediately after this meeting, there's an international committee meeting in the governor's room on the 12th floor, and there's also a Veterans and Military Support Committee meeting in the Imperial Room on the 12th floor. Next week's program, Michelle Green Ford, Executive Director of the Fort Worth Metropolitan Black Chamber of Commerce. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Have a great weekend. Oh my gosh. Tom.